Hey everyone, welcome back to the Chain Reaction Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Shaughnessy, a co-founder and principal at Delphi Digital. Delphi Digital is an independent research boutique providing institutional-grade analysis on the digital asset market. You can visit delphidigital.io to sign up for our Insights plan or our institutional offering. Today I'm thrilled to have on Max Brody and Cameron Hejazi, the two co-founders of Cent. Cent enables anyone in the world to earn income and is described as the evolution of the social network into an income source. If you haven't checked it out, visit cent.co. You'll thank us later. We cover the evolution of Cent, why it's built on ETH, and so much more in between all of this. It's a great story of two driven co-founders and their quest to create a killer product. I think they're already succeeding. With that, let's jump into the episode. Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today I have two special guests. I have Cameron Hejazi and Max Brody, the co-founders of Cent. How's it going, Cameron? How's it going, Max?
Good. Going well. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you guys on. I mean, I feel like you guys are one of the few applications in crypto built on Ethereum that people are using and that they totally love.
Thank you. We definitely agree with that statement. It's been cool to watch it grow, even through the sort of down crypto market.
Yeah, I bet. So let's dive into your backgrounds. I guess, Cameron, let's start with you. I mean, tell us about yourself and how you got started in crypto.
Yeah, so I'm Bitcoin class of 2011. I found out about it when I was an undergrad. And as soon as I sort of wrapped my head around how mining works and how everything else sort of falls from that, I was like, wow, this is incredible. Let me see how I can get involved in it. And so throughout undergrad, I was involved in various Bitcoin-related projects. I graduated with a CS degree, and actually, unrelated to Bitcoin, I went and worked in the advertising industry, the digital media and advertising industry. And through there, I got exposure to how content monetization works in general on the internet. And in that process, I became very disenchanted with the existing models, and I was constantly trying to think, how can we provide a better way? Whether it's through advertising or just completely cutting advertising out of the model, like there has to be some way that not only works for publishers and advertisers, but also consumers and sharers and all of these other parties who are participating in making something valuable as it is regarded, whether that's through CPMs or CPCs, all these other metrics. And so in 2015, I started a link sharing company that sought to capture that value for the sharers on social media. And that was heavily based on advertising. So I partnered with advertisers, and then I was effectively running an ad network. And also I had a bunch of sharers on social media who had followings, and they would monetize their audiences whenever they share stuff through my ad network. Ultimately, though, with advertising, it's a race to the bottom. And so that was when it became abundantly clear to me that really for the billions of people who are like engaging with this complex content monetization machine, advertising really doesn't work for them in an effective way. And so that got me starting to think about alternative models. And around that time is actually when I met Max. And so I can hand it over to him.
Yeah, Max, tell us about your background as well.
So my first introduction, I'll first start with my introduction to crypto, and then I'll talk about Cent. So randomly, I think my first introduction to Bitcoin was maybe 2010, for one day. I was experimenting on the deep web, and I was sort of fascinated with that in high school or right out of high school. And I noticed that everything was listed in BTC. And so I remember reading the Wikipedia article on it and being like, huh, interesting. And then I forgot about it for 5 years. In terms of actual Cent, though, I was in the sort of genesis of this idea for me was I was in college and I was a philosophy major, and I was very into that. My original plan in life was to be a philosophy professor, and I was very into thinking about sort of the conceptual underlying understructures of the way society operates, and I was just really going down these rabbit holes and seeing how money and how employment and how all these things were sort of these sort of grandfathered in assumptions of the way society has to work and all the implications that those decisions have had just in the world that we live in. And so I was thinking about all of that. And then I was at an internship. I was hating the internship, but I had finished the work of the internship that particular day at around 11 a.m. And I had to stay there till 5. And I was, sort of twiddling my thumbs at the desk. And I was like, is there anything I could do, on the computer here, like just on the internet that I can make, maybe $20 before the end of the day or something. Like I was like, there has to be something that exists where I can just make a little bit of money, because this was an unpaid internship. And so I started just looking around, like ways to just make immediate money on the internet. And to my surprise, there was very little options. I mean, there was, you could take surveys, but you had to take like 500 surveys and you get like, $2 or something. And there was things like Mechanical Turk, but they were like extremely, just again, the return on investment of time was just terrible. And so it started this sort of seedling of an idea in my head. And what that idea became was my first endeavor that I called Penny. And what that was this very simple network where you could share content, and instead of giving it a like or an upvote or a +1 or some of these sort of meaningless metrics that exist only within the context of another network, it allowed you to give 1 penny to the content. So it was sort of a microtransaction, 1-click service. And so I thought that was really simple and nice. I had this thought in my head that, 1 million likes is 1 million likes, but 1 million pennies is $10,000. Like that sort of immediately monetizes things in sort of a intuitive way. And I didn't know much about technology at the time, but really because of that project, I really dove into coding and design. Quickly found that I was much better at design than I was at coding. But I managed to build the first version of this thing. And I built it with Stripe and like a bunch of other fiat technologies sort of strung together. And there were a ton of problems. For one, it costs around 30 something cents to send 1 penny. So it doesn't really work out financially. There's a lot of legal issues, all sorts of things. And so I learned a lot about just like how any sort of tech entity has to run in the world, like, and how much of a financial and legal endeavor it is on top of being like a purely technical endeavor. And so I learned a lot from that. In around 2016, I was looking for other ways to do cheaper microtransactions. So I was really obsessed with microtransactions, and I wanted to be able to do this without using Stripe because it was kind of a nightmare. And that's how I stumbled onto Ethereum, actually, because I was looking up, alternative microtransaction systems. And obviously Ethereum enables all sorts of other things. And that sort of re-engaged me down the crypto rabbit hole. And right when I was sort of in the process of changing Penny to Cent, and then, with the conversion to Cent, I was going to build it on Ethereum, but I was really out of my, if I was going to build it alone on Ethereum, I think I was a little bit out of my technical depth. And that was right when I met Cameron, who reached out to me kind of at the perfect time. And in the interim, I had run design at 2 other companies, and really just kind of gotten a much better sense of how teams run and what the type of people that I liked working under and the type of people that I hated working under. And so I sort of felt ready to sort of put all that knowledge to the test and to starting something real with Cameron.
That's phenomenal. It sounds like a match made in heaven between you two guys. You each filled each other's needs there. And I want to get into Cent, like the overview of Cent and the elevator pitch. And the reason why I originally found it was, I know Stephen McKee at Amentum shared it around, a lot of respect for Stephen. But the other thing was I wrote like 120 articles in Seeking Alpha through college, and then ran a subscription site focused on tech research, and now co-founded an institutional research shop. So I think what you guys are doing is really interesting. And from the ad model, I remember being on Seeking Alpha, and they lost their syndication to Yahoo, and everybody's profit potential just plummeted. So I think that's kind of one of the things you guys are also hitting on here. So just give us the overview of Cent, if you could.
Sure. So we sometimes call it an incentive-based social network. We also call it an income-generating social network. And we're sort of evolving what that first phrase we use is, because in a way, it's a little bit more than a social network. But at its core, what it is, the vision is that anyone should be able to earn income from anywhere. So in the future, as AI, technology, in general, machines, code, take over jobs that we see that are sequential, like take a barista, like, take the cup, put the cream in, stir it, hand the cup to the customer, that type of job is going to be replaced. And we sort of take the stance that that's okay. And that's actually good, because those type of jobs generally don't utilize humans to their full potential. Now, there could be like a type of barista that's like an artisanal artist and then that's fine. But like in general, many jobs are sort of soul sucking, and that's kind of a meme in society. Like people hate Mondays, people love the weekends. People don't really want to be working in the way that they're working, and so we sort of see a new structure having to exist in order to get people income. And the way people will get income is by sharing their perspective, because their personal perspective is the only really unique thing everyone has. So even if a AI has much higher intelligence than you, it doesn't have your exact perspective. And that's sort of one of the axioms we run on, is that perspective is the source of value. And so given that, what Sen actually is, I'll get a little more concrete. So it's a network where you can join, and we have two core incentive structures right now. So you join. We started with bountying. Bountying is where you can make a post and you can attach a financial reward to the post as an incentive for people to reply. So that can be used in many different ways. At the beginning, it was like, people asking questions like, hey, can you do research on this coin that I'm thinking about investing in? Prepare like a 2-page research thing. And then people will attempt to be the best answer. So they'll go out and do the research and compile whatever. And then that will appear as responses to that post. And then other users will come along and they will sort the responses. And what that basically means is they just choose which responses they think are best. And every single time a user sorts a response, they earn a little bit of the reward just for sorting. So around 20% of every bounty is given to the sorter. So if I put a $10 bounty down to, make a logo for my juice company, then $2 of that $10 will go to the people that are choosing what the best logo they think is, which is a cool thing because it kind of gives you two layers of value. Take that logo example. It gives you, for one, all these logos to choose from, but it also gives you this sort of market research of, these are the logos that everyone put up, and I could choose to use anyone I want. But also I know that, everyone seems to think that this is the best logo. So, and that might not be the one that you would have thought was the best one. And so, and I found certainly for people that aren't sort of design oriented, they like to take a lot of cues from what other people think is good and bad. And so, so that was a popular use case at the beginning, but also just people generally posting blog-like posts, and then people and incentivizing people to reply. As well, musicians. That's another big sector that we've already hit hard, but we're going to be hitting harder in the future because I sort of am a musician outside of Cent, and I know a lot of musicians. And one of the biggest issues when you're starting off in music is one, that people are too nice. Like you have your friends and you show your friends anything and they're going to think, oh, that's dope, that's great. But they're just trying to be supportive. It's really hard to get like honest feedback. And so Cent's a great place for that. You can post your song, give people a few dollars to give you real honest feedback. What do they actually think? And on top of that, you can also just get it into people's heads. You could say, hey, I just released this album. Give me an album review. In order to be the best album review, they have to actually listen to the full album. And so that'll add to your plays on Spotify. And it'll be in their head. They'll be engaging with the music. And inevitably, I think it's more likely to turn them into a fan if they're really sort of in a critical way listening to it. And so, and really that works for any type of art. I'm just using music as an example. So that's bountying. And bountying is where we started. And that's really what a lot of people got to know Cent as. And we grew a lot just from that. We were able to raise our first round of funding just from bountying. And that sort of got us to mid 2018. And then in mid 2018, we released our next major incentive structure, which is seeding. And seeding is based on the idea that there should be a way for content to earn money from people that doesn't rely on those people being altruistic. Because if we dive down to the philosophy for a second, one of the other axioms we rest on is that altruism just does not scale. Like there's not enough people right now who will just give away money for nothing. The way people generally make decisions is selfishly. Even decisions that on the surface seem altruistic. Giving to charity often is so that you can feel good about yourself. So it's in a way it's a selfish decision. But we wanted to actually make it a financially selfish decision. And so we looked at a lot of different game theories, a lot of different models that existed elsewhere, and we like to think that we simplified and came up with a pretty great model. And how it works is this: someone comes along, they post something. Say they take a a nice photo and they write a little something about the New York City subway station. I don't know. They make some post. Someone comes along and they think, wow, that's a valuable post. And they think, I think other people will think this is a valuable post after me. What they can do is seed it, which means they send money to the post. The money gets distributed between the creator of the post and everyone who came before them that gave money to the same post. And so what that creates is really two things. It creates, an income source for the person who generated the post or published it, but also it creates an incentive for the person who gave money to go and tell other people about this post. They're financially incentivized to help this creator, which I think is huge on the internet nowadays. To actually have fans motivated to go out and help you in the same way that a tech investor, if they invest in your company, is motivated to do whatever they can after they invest in you to help you because they want to benefit. And I think there's something really beautiful actually about that financial relationship. And we've noticed that with our investors, how they just, do whatever they can to help us because they kind of have to, or it makes sense for them to. And so it's a really great experience because it feels like, okay, I gave $1 to that post yesterday. I came back today, and now I've made $3 after giving $1 because all these people came after me and gave money to the same post. And so since we launched seeding, we saw enormous growth. The network kind of grew exponentially for a large chunk of time. And we started dealing with bigger and bigger levels of scale. And I'll let Cameron get into, we released along with seeding, layer 2 scaling solutions that we can dive into. But right now, the network really revolves around seeding and bountying. We're about to release a bunch of new stuff, which we could talk about here. But that's sort of the overview of Cent right now. It's sort of this very unique, new structured social content task network. We're still trying to define what the best term is to describe it because we do kind of think it's a new category.
No, that's super interesting. I mean, it sounds like you guys put a lot of thought into the game theory and the philosophy behind how people curate and share information. I mean, if I'm a casual person going on Cent, what do you think people are looking for? Do you think they're looking for the top curated underground music, or do you think they're looking for the top crypto posts? I'm just trying to get a sense of what the content style is and kind of what's the most popular types of posts on the site.
It's interesting because it's kind of right now and this is actually one of the things we've been talking about a lot internally is it's kind of free for all right now. People post a lot of different things. Sometimes it's underground music, sometimes it's really well written posts, sometimes it's crypto news, sometimes it's memes, sometimes it's and originally that was kind of the we like the idea generally of kind of providing an open forum and not putting too many rules on what you can and can't do. Obviously, you can't break the law, things like that. But we kind of liked the idea of not being too structured about just seeing what people do when we don't tell them what to do. But that said, I think we're reaching a level of scale now where it's getting it needs to be a little bit more manageable. Now, one of the things people can do is, and a big feature is that you can follow topics and people, or what we call topics or channels. And so you follow the channels you want to follow, you follow the people you want to follow, and then you have a custom feed of just those things. And so that makes it much more custom for what you want to see. But right now it's a real mix. But we've been thinking a lot about, creating these, one idea that's in my head is to create sort of these sub worlds. So there'd be Cent music and it's sort of, it's a UX designed to experience music on Cent. And then, there's maybe Cent writing and it's just long form posts, kind of like Medium, and just having these little worlds have a dedicated user experience. Cause again, that's where I come from a lot is just, I think a lot of products are just successful because they just have the best UX and people just kind of want to be there. Like Medium, for instance, it's not that new in terms of the product. It's just a blog forum thing, but it's just really nicely designed. And I think people gravitate towards those things. And we've certainly heard that from people is that our UX tends to be seen as pretty inviting and pretty easy to grapple with. And people kind of like that because a lot of crypto things are pretty kind of aggressive in terms of their, they expect you're a really intense nerd. And so they sort of ask a lot from you, and we try to ask a little less.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And so I guess when you think about the platform, though, itself, especially with seeding. I mean, I'm just trying to think through like people sharing new information and news. Like let's say I figured out who Satoshi was and I posted it on Cent. Like it seems like that's something that would be seeded a lot and shared, and I could potentially make a lot of income on that. But what stops person X, Y, or Z from just screenshotting it and sharing it on Twitter or something like that? Or is that helpful for you?
Well, it's interesting because the rules around cross posting to other sites, it's a little gray throughout the whole internet, to be honest. Like it's like I think the whole space is sort of trying to figure out what the correct structure for that should be. Generally, I feel though that these different networks they have their different social etiquettes. Like I've seen people who will take whatever they tweet, they'll add as the caption to their Instagram post, which will also be their Facebook status. Like they'll basically do these posts across every network each time. And it never feels great. Like it always feels like it's like, it doesn't, whatever you post on Instagram is not the same tone you take on Facebook. It's not the same tone you take on Twitter. And so, and it's certainly not the same tone you take on Medium. And so I don't know if we've seen too much of people. If people were to cross post from Cent onto elsewhere, I think that would probably help us, especially if they screenshotted it, just because it would sort of include the fact that it's on Cent. But you are right in the sense that people right now, one of the things we're trying to deal with is that there's a lot of crypto related content, which is great. But I think sometimes crypto people lose sight of the fact of how niche crypto is, especially now. It's super niche. It's like a very tiny little sub community of the internet, and like the people that are genuinely into it. And so we feel like in a certain way where it's not going to take us long to get to sort of a saturation point of crypto people wanting to use new cool crypto things. And so what we really want to do is sort of spread out more into the mainstream world. And a lot of that requires that mainstream creators and people that are creating things that are not crypto related are on Cent, so that they'll bring people that are interested in experiencing that content to come on Cent. So we're doing a lot in that field to sort of spread things. We're actually opening office in Los Angeles, and we're trying to get Cent into like the pockets of people that tend to move the meter in terms of Western cultural awareness. Because right now we've got users in over 180 countries all over the world, and in a lot of those countries, making $20, $30 a week is a huge life-changing amount. In the Western world, it definitely affects your life. It's definitely not as life-changing. You probably still need to have a job. But that's sort of one of our main thoughts. I don't know if that was your exact question, though. Okay.
No, that's interesting. And one more just high-level question before we dive into the crypto connection here. I mean, it seems like a lot of like freelance type websites are really taking off, like Fiverr or Fever, however you pronounce it. There's Upwork, the other ones. But it seems like those users are looking for a specific job and looking for the talent, whereas on Cent, kind of the talent and the discovery is shared for people to find. It seems like it's the reverse. Do you think that you will compete with them in the future or not? I mean, I feel like you wouldn't, but I'm just wondering.
Some degree, I think so. I mean, one of the part of the vision that's always been in my head is that, okay, you have these networks, and I think it's pronounced Fiverr. You have these networks where people will do some single task for some single amount of money, like, hey, edit my video, for $20 or something. And you'll engage with that single person. What I've always thought would be more interesting is if a network like that actually fleshed itself out to become like an experienceable social network or content network because what happens with these types of creators, like I'll tell you for designers, I know a bunch of designers. What designers will do is they'll constantly be making things. They'll be constantly making like cool visual things because they're good at making things. And so it's fun. And so they'll make like, oh, check out this like spaceship thing I made. And they'll just post it on like, things like Facebook or whatever else or Instagram. And then on the flip side, they'll be trying to get design freelance jobs. And it always seemed like you could easily connect those two worlds where, okay, you could go onto a designer's profile on Cent. You could see all the posts they've made. Again, they're making money for each post, even if the post wasn't for anyone. The network is just valuing the post in itself. And then you could say one of the features we're thinking about in the future is you could click a button and sort of engage in a UI where you could engage with that particular designer to do a particular thing for you because you've seen their feed of content that they've just been posting about stuff they think is cool that they've made. And so you could think, oh, wow, this person really the style of what they make really matches the style of what I want for this project I'm working on. Let me engage with them. And ideally, we want to keep all of that as public as possible. So if that person makes something for you, that would maybe also appear on their feed. And that could also just sort of independently be valued and monetized by the network beyond you just paying them to do it. So that's one thought. But I do see us, I think a lot of these networks like Patreon and Fiverr and other things that monetize in interesting ways, like we look at all these and we study all of them, sort of the game theory of them and the psychology of them. And we tend to think that a lot of them could be, if done well, they could be interlocked together into one experience that would be really powerful. In the same way, my favorite large tech company is probably Apple. And one of the things I love that they did and they still do is they especially in like the early 2000s, they sort of took all these disparate services and they were like, well, we'll just create all versions of those like within our little universe and they'll interlock and it'll just be really pleasant to be in the sort of Apple universe. And over time, people will realize how seamless it is and then they'll come over. And so we're taking a slightly similar approach where it might be interesting if we had a Patreon-like functionality, if we had a Fiverr-like functionality and other things that sort of all felt tied together into like a really friendly social network or thoughtful social network, that might be a pretty cool experience. So I definitely see them as a potential future competitor. Yeah.
That's awesome. So let's go into the crypto connection a bit. I mean, what is the link between crypto and Cent or Ethereum and Cent for people that are unaware?
As to why we are integrated with ETH, for us, the decision came, as Max alluded to earlier, moving money around on fiat rails generally costs about 30 cents per transaction. And for the type of transactions that we want to do on Cent, seeding a little bit, maybe tipping a little bit, it's really not suitable for that type of expense. And so with ETH combined with layer 2 scaling solutions, we're able to move money around pretty efficiently at only in total the amortized cost of settling a state channel, which is generally pretty low given the current gas rates. And so that's sort of a benefit that we like to take advantage of. And then in addition, there's a chargeback resistant nature to cryptocurrency payments. So we don't have to worry about covering if a user pays and then decides to contact Visa and reverse the charge. We don't have any of those issues. Networks like Patreon, a lot of their operational overhead comes from these chargebacks and settling disputes with payment processors and the creators that they're paying out. And so for us, that's a really great advantage is we don't have to think about any of that. And then a final benefit is that it's super easy to send money to anyone around the world using cryptocurrency, provided you have some basic Web3 wallet loaded on your device. Beyond that, you don't need any personal banking information or anything beyond basically an email and a password that you need to sign up. We're able to efficiently route money anywhere in the world. And that's why we have users in over 180 countries.
That's interesting. So Cameron, I have two questions there. I mean, a lot of people think that ETH can't scale currently to support really use cases, but it sounds like from what you're talking about, you guys aren't facing that issue at all. And I also want to know why you guys decided to build on Ethereum versus building on Bitcoin or Tezos or EOS. Sorry for the two questions there. No,
yeah, great questions. So for us, we actually were confronted with the Ethereum can't scale problem back in, I think it was at the end of 2017, when CryptoKitties was really exploding. So we initially, when we released Cent, everything was on chain. Every time you boundied, sent money to another user, all of those interactions were on chain. And so that introduced a lot of unpredictability in terms of gas costs and confirmation times. And from a UX perspective, which is really where we think is the most critical for adoption, it provided a really poor UX. And so we sought to minimize those as much as possible. And CryptoKitties really made it apparent that if the network is running at or over capacity, it gets really bad. And so we rolled our own layer 2 scaling solution, which takes most of those transactions and moves them into state channels or payment channels specifically off chain so that users, when they want to post a bounty or do any other action on the network, it's instantaneous. There is no gas cost. There is no waiting time. It's just a message signature. And then what we do is periodically we'll settle out those channels, whether a user requests to withdraw or and otherwise close the channel. And so for us, that has made the usability greatly increased. And we think that a lot of other companies will adopt a similar type of architecture where you don't necessarily need to have everything on chain and need to be concerned about base layer scalability when you can move it to a layer 2 solution. And then what was your second question again? Why Ether over...
why use, I guess it goes back to another question that we kind of discussed offline prior. I mean, why did you guys decide to use Ether for payments and not, say, use your own token within the Cent platform?
Yeah, so I think when we say income from anywhere, we want that to be like as close to real income as possible. And when we have something like a native token, which needs to be listed on some Poloniex or some like less known exchange, like for us, we want to minimize the amount of steps it takes from someone doing an action on Cent to them capturing that value in their bank account or however they choose to spend it. And so when we talk about having a token, for us, initially we actually did talk about having a token, but for us, it was never about our token being the currency that drives the platform, the currency that drives income. But we were thinking of interesting ways that it could help bootstrap growth and incentivize early adoption. And we can get into that as part of a separate discussion. But we ultimately moved away from that just from sheer complexity. Like most users, the motivation to earn income is enough. And we've seen growth all throughout the bear market in our user base because there is this strong will for something like this platform to exist. And so ultimately we walked away from the idea of launching a token even because we felt like we had a more powerful product that didn't even need one in the first place.
Got it. That makes sense. And, back to your layer 2 comment, I mean, there's a lot of buzz around Bitcoin's Lightning Network. I think that there's more buzz than discussion of the issues around it. Did you guys look into using Lightning for payments or on Bitcoin, or did you guys pass on that, or just wondering there?
Yeah. So I'm familiar with Lightning Network to an extent. The amount of setup that goes into getting your Lightning wallet online and linked to a hub, it's really not practical at this point for us to migrate over to something like Bitcoin on Lightning. For us, a huge deciding factor was what is the most accessible sort of currency. And for today, that's largely ETH, right? You have MetaMask, you have Coinbase Wallet, you have Trust Wallet, you have all of these ways of interacting with what is now called the Web3, and that happens primarily through ETH. Now, there's obviously some competitors, but for us, it was a no-brainer to go with ETH because, like we said, the technology is mature enough to a point where enough people are able to use it, and we are also able to develop on top of it efficiently, right? I had gone from not knowing any Solidity in 2016 to becoming fairly proficient and able to sort of roll our own L2 scaling solution on using Solidity and on Ethereum. And so to me, the technology just seemed more mature. And then from an accessibility point, it just sort of stuck its neck out as the winner.
Got it. And, what's it like for the users on Cent? Like, is it very easy to, say, withdraw their current balance? I've noticed that everything is based in dollars, not priced in ETH. So I'm assuming that kind of makes the thought process easier.
Yeah. So there's a toggle in the account settings where you can choose if you want to have the default display currency be USD or ETH. Everything is ETH under the hood. We found that for new users approaching the platform who might not have any exposure to ETH, just the familiarity of the US dollars makes it much more clear what's going on to them. And so as part of that, we made it so that a user can go through the whole experience of the platform. They can sign up, they can start responding to questions, they can start making posts, they can do all of these things. And only once they have money, and then the money that they want to do something with specifically, do they need to have a Web3 wallet. And so we make it to the point of which you've earned money is the point at which you need to actually learn how to use that money. And so we delay it as far as possible in the user experience because obviously then familiarizing yourself with the notion of a wallet is a hurdle. Installing a specific app or an extension is also a hurdle. And these are all pain points that we're looking to minimize in the future, integrating with other Web3 providers. But yeah, when you want to withdraw, it's a matter of signing a message saying, I authorize this withdrawal for this amount to this address. And so what happens is we take that message and then we close out an appropriate channel or number of channels that will fund that withdrawal. And then that goes to your account on chain. And then you can do whatever you want with that money.
That's awesome. It sounds like you guys are going to be going to have a lot of working capital questions, not questions, but just management in a couple of years if you're huge, because the price of ETH varies and you're paying out in dollars. But I don't think that would be too much of an issue.
Oh, no. We pay out in ETH.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. Everything is in ETH. It's just on the presentation layer, we get the live exchange rate, and we showcase that for better usability.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So, when you're thinking about Ethereum 2.0 and Serenity, or I guess the goal here is to not have to think about it because it currently works for you guys. Are you worried about Serenity, or do you want higher scale there? It seems to me like you guys only need layer 1 or ETH 1.0, and you don't really need ETH 2.0.
Well, it's a great question. So the way we've designed our system, it is very ETH 1.0 compatible. I mean, honestly, the roadmap for Ethereum and the stakeholders and their interests, sometimes it seems like really misaligned. And I won't go name names or anything like that, but really it's tough to get a clear vision of like what the deliverable dates are for the project and what the expectations are. So when it comes to me analyzing, well, ETH 2.0, like what's that going to entail? I really don't know much about what's going into ETH 2.0. I don't know what to expect. I know what's happening with ETH 1.0, and I can trust that on the 1.0 chain, things will continue to make sense for us. We can make decisions that sort of reflect the interests of our business. But with ETH 2.0, I don't know what the assumptions are. There are unknown unknowns for us. And so really, when we chose a blockchain platform, we wanted to minimize those assumptions as much as possible, because that can sort of help us make a smarter decision. And so with ETH 2.0, I feel like it's sort of like this Pandora's box of chaos. And I would personally, if I had one recommendation, I would like to see it much more distilled into a sort of clear set of expectations for app developers, because really we're leveraging Ethereum as a tool. We don't necessarily see ourselves as people who are pushing that base layer innovation further, and we just sort of want to understand what to expect.
That's a great way to put it. I mean, my biggest concern with the transition to Serenity is that all the apps and smart contracts and everything built on ETH 1.0, all the developers are going to say, do I want to transition to 2.0 or do I want to go to another blockchain?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I mean, to that extent, to that end, like ETH right now is for sure the lead smart contracting platform that exists today. We don't know what could exist in a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, but we're constantly, what we sort of look for is what is the most accessible technology, because ultimately there's going to be a moment where crypto breaks into the mainstream. And my hypothesis is that the substrate for that will be accessibility, what people are able to use, what people are able to spend, how they're able to interact with it and their peers. And so we really value that almost over everything else. Not entirely, but it's a big factor.
That makes sense. And my last question on Ethereum for you, I mean, is there anything that you can see that would lead you guys to switch to another smart contract platform, or, right now, or no?
Well, I think that if there's something that retains the permissionless innovation capacity that Ethereum has, but again, going back to accessibility, is just more accessible for whatever reason. That could be any number of factors. It could be that maybe by default, you don't need an extension. Maybe it's like security enabled by default in your browser, and all you have to do is pull in some script into your app. I don't know what those solutions could be like because they don't exist yet, but anything that moves the needle forward to making it so that mainstream users can onboard into this platform while still providing the advantage to developers to permissionlessly innovate is a very strong value proposition in my mind.
Got it. That makes sense. And I lied. Last question for you on the crypto connection. I mean, what's the thought process of building your platform using blockchain technology? I mean, is there a path to, say, decentralize the ownership of the site or something like that, or maintain immutability for earnings? I'm just wondering, why not a centralized company just built on AWS?
Yeah, so it's actually funny. We are a centralized company built on AWS. we use a lot of AWS and Google Cloud products. There's no shame in that from our perspective. We know that some crypto companies are sort of decentralization maximalists, and they're really pushing the needle forward in like what can be done. And we're trying to push the needle forward in what the world needs, and what we believe the world needs. And so we're fans of decentralization. Like I said earlier, it has provided a host of benefits to us related to moving money, moving small amounts, moving them efficiently across a network located globally. For that core part of moving money, the network, the Ethereum network, has been phenomenal. Now, for everything related to image hosting and feed generation and curation and all of these real-time actions that a user expects from a Web 2.0 app, Web 3.0 apps generally fall very short. And so we're looking to fill that gap by having some sort of foot in the door of decentralization, but not our entire app development process and iteration capacity sort of tethered to that. And so for us, decentralization right now makes most sense on the payment side. As the technologies mature and as it becomes more clear that this is a real demand driver for users to have, decentralized or self-sovereign identity, content ownership, all these sort of things, we will move toward that direction. But we're not sort of taking the charge and leading the search for that demand. If that makes sense.
No, that's interesting. I mean, you guys are one of the first companies I've talked to that are kind of honest about, using AWS and building on it, which I think is pretty cool. And it's kind of merging crypto and cloud, which is interesting. So I guess just moving on to, back to the platform itself, just a couple of quick fire questions here. I mean, the earnings scenario seems pretty interesting where people seed and then the money gets distributed to the earlier seeders. I mean, so you guys aren't subsidizing any earnings here, correct? I mean, this is basically all money given by other people, or?
Yeah. So when we first started, we did a little bit of sort of dog fooding, and we would seed things, but nowadays we do nothing. Like it's all really money users are giving other users.
That's interesting. That's great. And I mean, it sounds like the incentivization method is working really well. I mean, do you guys have any info on, if you can't share growth numbers, that's fine, but I'm just interested in any metrics you guys could share on maybe the platform or growth of the platform or even users.
Yeah. So in the past 7 days, we've had over $360 offered in bounties. We've had over 3,000 posts and replies and interactions just among users on the network. And then through the seeding mechanism, there's been $443 earned also in the past week. So we have solid amounts of money flowing through the platform. It's exciting. Our user base is growing. We're over 12,000 users. And yeah, if there's any sort of specific stat you'd be interested in, we can always dig into that. But overall, the network has been growing week over week for the past several months at quite a few percentage points. So we're really excited about that.
Wow, I mean, that's awesome. I mean, the 12,000 users sounds incredible. I'm not sure if that's daily or monthly, but I know Dharma Lever was like over or near 2,000, and I think Dai had like 700 daily active users. So that sounds pretty impressive.
Yeah, so that's actually our total users, and then monthly it's around actually 10,000. So we get a lot of new users coming and a lot of retention among existing users.
Wow, that's pretty good. So I mean, the money obviously sounds somewhat low now, but I guess the point here is that you guys are proving that the model works and that it can scale up. Is that kind of the way to think about it?
And also the money, right now, I mean, the thing that I can't get over is that, or that I'm always like harping on to the team, is that just how small of a subset of society understands these technologies now. So the fact that even they're able to get a few $100s per month right now is cool. And if we could make this sort of as easy to use as any other app in the world, which it's close to being, but if we just sort of reach that last step of just getting like where you don't have to, even understand what a wallet is, or understand, that there's maybe like one or two more steps to go, where I think we can really start pushing it into the mainstream, which is when we'll get people that are more attractive to mainstream people. Because right now I talk to a lot of people where, I have friends in New York who are just not in technology at all, or friends in LA that are not in technology at all. And I'll explain them the thing, and they'll think it's super cool, and then they'll go on, and the content itself, it's not content that they immediately resonate with because they're not in sort of the crypto world. And so I think once we can bridge the gap and start getting people on that are comfortable using it and are making content that is distinctly not crypto. I mean, to be clear, we already do get a bunch of that, but once we get sort of a certain threshold of that, I think that's really when all the money will go up, because that's really where there'll be more people seeding, there'll be more people bountying. And as well, we actually have a lot of new stuff we're releasing that is specifically designed to increase the monthly amounts users make, which we can maybe preview a little bit. But yeah.
That's interesting. And last question on the money. I mean, I'm just still confused on like if there's $5 seeded to a post and like in dollars, but the price of ETH doubles. Like, does the seeded amount go from $5 to $10, or is that kind of a risk for you guys, or how does that work?
It doubles, yeah. So it's all done in ETH, and then we're just sort of on the UI side, which you can actually change in settings. If you just want it to appear in ETH so that the number stays the same the whole time, you can easily do that. I've found that for me, at least, I find it way more useful to see it in US dollars, and I think most users do. But yeah, you can go in and change it to whatever you want. But if the ETH price doubled, yeah, your $5 bounty would become a $10 bounty.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So you guys, I mean, that's a great like incentive for users who also think that the price of ETH may increase, is that they can work on your platform too.
Exactly. Like we have yet to essentially exist when ETH has been going up. But I think maybe right when we started for a little bit. But I think if it does, I think we'll definitely ideally see some cool growth numbers, because it's the easiest way to earn it right now, I think, in the world. Like you can go on, you sort, you press maybe the mouse 6 times and you've earned some ETH immediately for sure. And so I think,
no, totally. Yeah. I mean, from your perspective, I would rather have that than you guys bear the risk of the ETH, because that could be a huge time bomb if you guys were subject to making up the difference if ETH went down.
Oh yeah, that would be.
Totally agree. So let's get into the fun stuff before we close out. I mean, what do you guys have on the release schedule to upgrade Cent with?
Yeah, so there's one thing I could preview. So what we're preparing right now is a pretty robust live chat sort of DM experience. And we've put a lot of thought into this, because there's a lot of apps, around there. There's like Slack and Discord and Facebook Messenger and Instagram, Twitter DMs that kind of make the experiences, at least to me, feel a little bit more like in the moment live. Cause just like talking to someone and then seeing those little dots appear that they're typing back. It's just kind of this exciting thing that's like, it's just occurring now. And so we put a lot of thought around that into how that would potentially fit into Cent, because a lot of users meet other users on Cent, because there's it's definitely a community. And so users will meet other users and they often want to talk to them. And so maybe they'll like, oh, what's your email or what's your Twitter? Let's talk on there. And then they'll sort of have to find someplace outside of Cent to talk with one another. And we kind of want to facilitate those interactions within the platform. And the other major thing the really unique thing, I think, that actually could be enormous for us, is that we're going to enable the ability to seamlessly and immediately send Ether to other users via the messenger. So almost like a crypto Venmo type of experience, because given that we have such a large network already, for a lot of users, the people they would want to send ETH to begin with are also on Cent. And so it's really easy to just look up their username, press the little icon in the messenger window and send them ETH. And you don't need to know their address. You don't need to know any of that. And it just gets sent to them. And so I think both of those features are going to potentially have a big effect on just users also feeling like, oh, this is easy. Like if that existed now, that would genuinely be how I would, send crypto to my crypto, my Ethereum friends, because it's just, I'm sure it's going to work. I don't have to worry about mistyping an address or something. And it's like 3 clicks. And so that's what we're working on. We're also opening up on a non-technical front. We're opening an office in Los Angeles. I think I told you that. So that's going to sort of bring in hopefully a lot of new energy. And we've also been thinking about some brand new incentive structures that we're probably too early to talk about yet. But we're pretty excited about that.
That's awesome. That's great. And my last question for you guys, just, down the line, 5 years from now or something like that, it sounds like you guys are becoming like a real massive curation machine. I mean, is there any idea here to like sell the data to AWS or Facebook or?
So we have no intent of ever selling user data to third parties. I know that's something that a lot of existing networks do. Facebook is by far the biggest offender in that, and the most successful one. But the reason that they do that is because they need to collect that money, the users of the product, and they need to sell the product to fund their operations, all the engineers they have, all the staff. It's a massive operation. For us, we have another lever at our disposal, and that is transactions. So in addition to sharing content on the platform, Cent is a platform for enabling peer-to-peer transactions. And so as a company, what we look to do is to take a portion of those transactions and capture that as value for the company. We feel like, contrasted with advertising, this is much more aligned with the user base. It's not exploitive. It doesn't subvert their privacy and other values. And so we see that as a much more powerful and honest way to scale and fund the company's operations as we grow. So no, to answer your question, we don't have any intent of ever selling user data for revenue or otherwise.
That's noble and admirable. So I guess all the people that are using sites respect that. So Cameron and Max, it's been a pleasure to have you guys on. Is there anything we didn't hit on that you'd like to discuss or that I missed?
No, I think we covered all the core points. Thanks so much for having us.
Yep. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, of course. And guys, before I let you go, where could people find more about Cent or follow you guys?
Yeah, so just 7 taps on your phone, cent.co. And you're there, and you'll be taken right to the app. And we have a lot of new stuff being released in the next month and a half. So if you join now, prepare to really join us on this journey as we really scale a lot over the next few months.
I love that quick call to action. Cameron and Max, thanks so much for coming on.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, please rate and review it so other people can find it.